Welcome to the State of the Buccaneers podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Pfefferkorn, and this is the biggest and only fan-run podcast of the East Tennessee State Buccaneers. We'll get right back to you after the tune. Welcome back to the State of the Buccaneers podcast. It's been a little while. But that's just because I've been busy, starting a new job and everything. But I'm pleased to welcome a guest tonight. You might know him from Twitter. He's one of the biggest SoCon media guys on Twitter, like fan or media people on Twitter. Sort of talks everything SoCon. I'm pleased to welcome SoCon John to the podcast. Introduce yourself, sir. Good sir.
Well, I appreciate it, Jacob. I think I actually watched the first couple podcasts that you had on there, and you had some great guests. I think Brooks was on there, and that was great banter and just great subject matter, and so I really appreciate you having me on, and I love, like you said, talking anything SoCon, ETSU, whatever. I mean. And it's like Christmas to me. It's almost tournament time. So,
me too. I'm the same way. I'm like counting down the days to March Madness.
But yeah, so I really appreciate all the nice words you said, and just looking forward to talking some SoCon hoops and football and wherever the conversation leads us. Yeah.
Yep. I'm glad to have you on. So that was the intro, but we're just going to sort of segue into SoCon hoops, which is kind of what's hot right now. Like you said, March Madness.
I guess I should have said that probably I'll write for Mid-Major Madness and Retro Sports and cover the Southern Conference. I guess that's
sort of that probably would have helped because I didn't know what official you wrote for. I'm not plugged into that as much.
You can follow me on Twitter at SoCon John 22. And you know, we have our own thing now. Like we got SoCon Twitter. Like we got our own our own part of the internet right now on Twitter. So that's pretty cool.
I know it's sort of grown over the years. It's been since like the Forbes days. It's just interacting with everybody on Twitter.
I think a lot of that excitement, and you know, you see the Cole Spivies and all the people on there. It kind of coincided with the excitement level for the league, really, and how the league is really punching way above its weight, or what it had been in the past. And I think it's been incredible. I think a lot goes into like keeping it sustained success. You got to have good coaches, which the league obviously has, and that makes for exciting games. I mean, a lot of these games are one possession, and then you'll have the outliers too. So even I think the military schools do a great job of hiring guys that can come in and not necessarily turn it around, but be competitive with the rest of the league right away.
Yeah, because I mean the military schools are at a disadvantage. At least VMI is.
Yeah.
Citadel is in a better place because they got the grad transfer or graduate programs they have now. Just thinking about it, all the coaches that have come out of the Southern Conference here in recent years, you got Mike Young, Wes Miller, of course, Steve Forbes, Lamont Paris, and now we're in the next generation. You got Mike Jones, Bob Ritchie, what's his face, Dan Earl. Brooke Savage, Bucky McMillan, of course.
And I even think I think Ed Conroy around the league. I mean, he's known as just a guy that's really good at X's and O's wise, and he's always going to have, no matter if they've got more talent or you've got more talent than they do, he's gonna be able to keep them in the game because he's such a good coach. So. And that is, I mean, I think I think it's one of the interesting things is the Citadel is one of those teams that's never made the NCAA tournament, and like VMI, the last time they made it was like 1977.
Yeah,
but they made the Elite Eight.
Elite Eight, yeah. That's sort of like ETSU's run in the Sweet 16 the one year when they had
Mister.
I forget his name. Not Mister. That was
ABA
that. Guy. Harley Swift.
That's right.
Harley Skeeter Swift. I think that's his name.
Harley Skeeter is his nickname, I guess.
Yeah. But having those military schools, having them
what
being
year
relevant,
was that? Like 68 or was that like?
I think it was 68.
Okay.
Because I know we put it in promotional stuff. We played Florida State in the Sweet 16. I know they were good around that time.
That's interesting to find out, like, if teams are still good. Like, obviously ETSU has a tradition, but like Florida State, they've kind of been here and there, throughout history.
I know they had Dave Cowens there. Around that time. I think that might have been. He may have been on that team. I don't know.
And kind of the full circle moment there would be Andrew Wilson, who's the VMI head coach now. Played for Leonard Hamilton at Florida State. So.
Leonard Hamilton's probably one of the most respected coaches in college basketball.
In the country, for sure.
Just because he's instilled. Florida State's not good right now, but the past 10 years they've been a consistent tournament team.
I think some of those battles that they had with like North Carolina when Roy was there. I think it was a couple years ago. Was it the COVID year? Did they win the ACC?
I think so.
I think they won the ACC that year, and that's when everything got canceled. Like, they were supposed to tip off. I think it was with Clemson in the ACC tournament, and like everything ended.
I bring this up a lot. That week was just insane. Like, I went to the SoCon final.
Yeah.
Against
that was
ETSU
ETSU
Wofford.
Won it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I just bought my new car, or my used car. It was a new car for me, but buying that, and then 2 days later, the world shuts down pretty much. Like,
I just really felt for the ETSU team because, I think they could have. I know they probably could have won, given the matchup. I think they could have won at least one game, maybe two, depending on who they got in the bracket with them. But that was a really good team.
My thoughts, I really think they could have made the Sweet 16 because they were projected to play Iowa or Penn State, and they weren't. Those teams weren't the greatest that year. I feel
like those aren't a good. We would have been a SoCon team would have been a bad matchup for either one of them. Like with ETSU's quickness and some of the things that they did in transition would have. Against a team like Penn State would have been trouble, I think.
Yeah, because ETSU had an experienced team that gelled well together, and those teams are just kind of good offenses, but not great defensively.
But they defended you; they locked you down.
Yeah.
You couldn't do any that was one of the things that it's so tough for. I think it's tougher for teams outside the SoCon. Like, it was tough enough for the teams in the SoCon to play ETSU, but like teams that really had no idea about ETSU would find that it would be a lot more frustrating because at least in the league, you kind of have an idea that they're pretty good, so you're a little bit more prepared for them. But like, I think a team like Iowa or Penn State who'd never played ETSU would have gotten in a game and got frustrated really quickly.
Yeah, swarming defense from physical guards like Bo Hodges and Tisdale, Davian Williamson, Trey Boyd even. And
I think Tisdale, he might have been the best defender on that team. But they were all good.
Yeah,
he was
swarming. And then we had the big men down low with Jerome and Lucas Gasson and Joe Hughley.
He had the Twin Towers down there.
Yeah.
2 7 foot. And that team was, if you look at it, it's sort of built like some of those Wichita State teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that, where Forbes kind of was before remember they had at Wichita, they routinely had those guys that were just like, I think they had like a 6'11" and a 7-foot guy. They were big underneath.
Men. I don't remember many of their big men. I know
but they had really good guards, obviously.
Fred VanVleet.
Was it Cleanthony Early?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
He went to the NBA. I know that name because of 2K.
But it's crazy because a lot of those guys weren't highly recruited. And they developed all those guys into
all physical guards that play pro basketball still to this day.
And there were a lot of similarities on a different level to the type of player that ETSU had. You know what I mean? Like, they had a certain toughness to them, but they were athletic, but they were so good defensively, and all those Wichita teams were so good on the defensive end. So,
and you see it now. Now that Brooks Savage's coach, the play style is back. You sort of see it in his recruiting process. Looking at physical guards like Q-Mari Peterson, Ebby and Q-Mari. That's sort of I know that they're not as great of shooters as Geelon Gwynn and TJ Cromer, but they remind me physicality wise, or it kind of reminds me.
I mean Cromer. Yes, let's go back. I mean, do you remember? And this is a name that came to me the other day when I was kind of doing a little podcast of my own. But like Deuce Bello was a freakish athlete.
Yeah,
I mean,
I remember.
Dude was absolutely a walking highlight. But he was at Baylor before he was at. Is that right?
Missouri. He was at Missouri and Baylor.
Okay, yeah.
He didn't really get minutes because he didn't have as much on the offense, or he didn't have a good shooting game as much.
He's a guy that was really, really good in the early. I think it was maybe Forbes' first team, maybe of his first team.
It was his first couple teams.
Yeah, and so he got some really good players in there right away.
Yeah.
I never forget that. Was it Cromer? The year that ETSU went to that tournament that started at 3 a.m. or whatever in Las Vegas.
Oh yeah, the Vegas 16.
So they played Oakland or somebody at I don't know, 2 a.m. or something. I think Cromer had a huge game. I think that's.
I remember that. I wasn't watching that game. I watched the first one we played against Louisiana Tech, but I didn't watch the second game. I think.
So that's kind of I just always remember that was the team. I think that was 15-16, I believe. And then the next year, ETSU won it.
Win tournament.
Right.
Because I know that his first year, we made it to the championship.
Lost to
Chad. We got jobbed. I'm against on that foul call, and Forbes got the tee.
Yeah.
Forbes and Cromer got double tees.
That's crazy because that was Lamont Paris was the coach at Chattanooga. It was Matt McCall. It was Matt McCall. Right, and then the next year, you remember I think he bolted to go to UMass or something.
Yeah, UMass.
And then Paris came in they were
deconstructed Ross. Yeah.
And you're this guy. I mean, that's impressive for Paris. I mean, to be able to turn that around.
He didn't walk into a good situation.
No,
you can see it. You can see it. His program building at South Carolina right now, just to turn around. He's had on that program.
I think that's interesting. If you look back at Forbes and what when he was at ETSU, he knew how to navigate the JUCO route, perhaps better than any coach I've ever really seen. I mean, there was a guy at Chattanooga back in the day named Mac McCarthy that was pretty good at it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, as far as like Forbes just knew how. You got to know how to not only find talented guys, but got the personalities that will fit together. Like that was always the thing that struck me about Forbes is like he, even more than like the coach he is, like how does he know what personalities work well together? You know what I mean? Like
how they fit
so
together. Because when you go to the JUCO level, you don't know if they're either you're just there because they flamed out elsewhere or they didn't have the grades or whatever, you know.
Well, and a lot of the guys he was getting were like guys that legitimately just got overlooked. Like it wasn't like a situation where they got in trouble, you know.
Yeah.
In trouble. It was like guys that just legitimately
didn't have the offers.
Through the cracks, right?
Went to the wrong high school.
Right, exactly. And so, or didn't like. There's a lot of politics that go into recruiting.
Yeah.
Didn't know the right people. You know what I mean? Like so. So that was always interesting when you look back at it. But that also was kind of ETSU's like that became sort of their identity. Like he didn't make ETSU like he didn't try to make ETSU Wofford. He didn't try to make it like another
system. Yeah.
Right. So that was always impressive to me because you got to have an idea. You got to know like what you're doing and like who you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I know I'll never forget like his first press conference. He said, "I'm going to recruit Burger King All-Americans, not McDonald's All-Americans."
Yeah,
that was a famous quote.
Yes,
right there.
But in you know like that's kind of a his team's always bought into that workman like blue collar, just toughness that you got to
physical,
have. Right? And sometimes things aren't like in basketball, especially. Things aren't used like a lot of times they don't go your way. Like you
could just have an off night, you know.
Right, and so like the only way that you're going to be able to guarantee that you can stay in a game is if you defend. Like you can't trust your shooting ability like a lot of the time.
It's hot or cold, you know.
Right. So that was always impressive because his teams, and really, I mean, that's what made so many wars with them in like UNC Greensboro.
I remember those games. Yeah, what's his name?
Wes Miller.
Alonzo. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking Alonzo and Culper and all those guys.
Yeah.
Forgetting some of their names. Those are the two.
Jordy Kuiper is the he's like from Holland or whatever, I think.
Yeah, they had a lot of international guys. So did ETSU, but
yeah. But that like those games would be like first team to 60, you know, like wins.
I remember going to the SoCon championship the year before we went before 2020, or was that 2 years?
They played did they play 2 years in? Oh,
it was my senior year of high school. Yeah, it was. We played UNCG in the championship, and that was just
one year, and then lost to them the next year, right?
Yeah. It was Bo Hodges' freshman year. We had Malott and Armas.
Is that the year
we lost? Yeah.
So ETSU, the year they won, they played Florida in the tournament. Is that right?
In the
NCAA. And then I'll never forget UNCG won it the next year, and then they got in the tournament against Gonzaga, and had Gonzaga on the ropes, and then gave
him a game,
and ran some kind of alley-oop play that looked like really like an out-of-place call right there at the end of the game. And I'm just like, I don't know that was the greatest play to run right there.
Yeah.
But they were good. There was I remember they were the team that sort of a lot of people around the league disliked because they were so physical. Which
they got on my nerves. As a ETSU fan.
But now that I look back at it, I that's kind of how you have to be to win a championship.
Yeah, I mean that's how Wofford was.
Yeah,
and they had Fletcher McGee and all those guys, and how ETSU was in 2020.
Was it Cameron Jackson? He's so good, the big man.
Mm-hmm.
They could have easily beaten Kentucky that year. If McGee doesn't have his worst shooting night of his career.
Yeah. That's a funny thing about March. Like, shooting is hit or miss. Defense stays, like you said.
So when you look at this year and ETSU's team and really around the league, I mean, it's just so hard to predict. I mean,
yeah, this is probably the most unpredictable it's been since that time period where it was UNCG, ETSU, and Wofford.
I can't really get. I mean, I know Samford's good, and they, they'll be the favorite.
Yeah.
And, but I don't know if you're like me. I don't feel like I'm 100% sure that I can just say, without a shadow of a doubt, I'm going to Sharpie them as the champion. Like if I'm trying to predict this thing, like it was a lot easier for me to say that with like Furman last year.
Yeah, Furman had those 5-year guards, Slauson and
Boswell.
Boswell.
Yeah, and then so even the year before that, like, Chattanooga was the team. Like they came into the year, and they had Malachi, and the year before that was like UNC Greensboro. They had Isaiah Miller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like this is the year. This like even though Samford's really, really, really good, I just don't feel comfortable being like they're hands down the favorite, right? Do you agree?
I get that feeling too, because Samford they've had in the non-conference, they had a really easy non-conference schedule, so them being the 1 seed is kind of questionable. I mean, they haven't really upset anybody outside of in non-conference.
Well, you and I were kind of talking about you're a Purdue guy.
Yeah, me. That's my other team, and we.
Is there any team in the SoCon outside, like maybe VMI and the Citadel? I mean, like, I gotta believe that ETSU keeps it within 54. Like, or whatever.
ETSU would be fine until they fouled out Parker and Seymour, and then
they couldn't do anything with it.
Then it'd be over.
But do you think that's because they tried to keep playing fast against Purdue and it just wasn't working?
Yeah, they were just taking shots. They were trying to take threes too much. Like, honestly, the best player that played for him was the short guy. What's his name?
Graziani?
Graziani. He played the best out of any of them.
The dude that jumped it up.
He wasn't scared. Yeah.
Yeah.
He just didn't play scared.
Well, I know, like, I did read, like, and some of it has to do with Purdue's just they got a lot of dudes that are tough to shoot over because they're really good.
Physical.
I mean Purdue legitimately is one of the handful of teams that will be picked to win the whole thing.
Yeah. Because
they're really good. I'm not saying that. But, like, this wasn't even like a 30. That's not even like 30 points. We're talking 50. Like, that is a lot of points.
Because, like I said previously, other mid-majors played against Purdue, and they put up better fights. Morehead State played good against us, and Eastern Kentucky played pretty good. They had good shots. Of course, they were still blowouts, but they hit shots, played physical, forced Purdue out of their comfort zone more.
And by contrast, and then they play, I think after that game, Samford played like 12 in a row at home, I think.
Yeah.
They did have, Louisiana was a pretty good win in there. Towards the end, they beat Belmont. That was a decent
Belmont's
win.
A good win. I'll give them that.
But they played 12 in a row at home. That's just, to me.
And another thing that's concerning as we kind of get into last night's games, big games, a lot action, SoCon action this week, they got blown out by like 30 points by Wofford, even though they were resting players.
The concerning thing to me for that is you don't play your starters. We talked about this before the show.
Yeah.
The Indianapolis Colts, the whole comparison, was it 2009?
Yeah.
That messes. Doesn't that mess with your psyche? Like you're going in confident, I just don't. And every team in the league has played. You guys, ETSU play without Karan Boyd.
Yeah, that was our roughest stretch.
I don't recall them getting beat by whatever last night. Like
all of our losses in that time period, it was literally by the points Karan Boyd averaged. Like it wasn't even.
Okay, so Furman played without Pegues. They played a UNCG without Pegues, Foster, and Alex Williams, their top three scorers, and still only lost by 11 on the road. Sanford had their best players still playing last night and lost by, I don't know, was it 22? They were down by 30 at one point.
It makes no sense because they played great Saturday and then
they do, and I don't think that's I'm not trying to say that's an indictment on the team. I think they just sort of mailed it in.
It's like if you're not trying 100% in conference, when you get to Asheville, it's going to come out. Isn't
that dangerous? Because you can't just turn that on and off, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that I'm not sure the extent of the injury to Achor, but to me, he's probably been their best player this year.
I'd say so because the mid-major level, especially, if you don't have your big man, like if you have a established big man, it wrecks stuff. You look at Indiana State; they lost one of their players, and they blew it against Illinois State.
Is it the funny-looking guy, Diavola?
No, he was still playing. It was another one of their big men. They have two pretty good players. One of them was out. Yeah,
that guy's funny-looking, but he can play.
If he gets in March Madness, he's going to be that.
Yeah.
There's always that one player at like a mid-major school that goes off. Like 1 year was Thomas Walkup at.
Maybe get NIL with a goggle company or something.
Yeah. That'd be funny.
Like Kurt, I always felt like, you remember the dude that played for the Lakers, Kurt Rambis?
Yeah.
He should have had I feel like that. I don't know. There's just something about a guy that's got goggles on and all kinds of knee pads or something. Brian Cardinal is a good example.
Brian Cardinal, the garbage man.
Yes. The man that probably, in my time growing up, probably made knee pads more famous than they ever would have been otherwise.
Funny story about him, actually. Some of my family does a well drilling business, and they were drilling a well for an Olympic volleyball player, Lloyd Ball. His house was beside Brian Cardinal's house.
That's cool. I heard he was just if they had given out an all hustle award, he would have won it every year. But he was the first really glue guy I can ever remember. When I was growing up, they didn't call it that then, really. Yeah. But he was just a guy you couldn't be without him because of what he did that didn't show up on the stat sheet necessarily.
Those people that dive, dive in the middle of games. This year's Purdue team, it's Lance Jones. He's that guy for us.
Yeah.
And
ETSU, so is Karan Boyd, obviously.
Yeah, Karan
I'm actually
Boyd,
doing a story on him. It should be I should be done next week, but like how he's sort of like what when you guys didn't have him, it was just it wasn't necessarily, it was the points, but it was more like what he did energy wise on the offensive boards, as well as like a lockdown defender, and on the defensive glass.
Like looking at those defense, like his rebounds, like he's the second.
He ranked 43rd in the country in like offensive rebounds, if I'm not mistaken.
And that was like our difference in those games.
Yeah. And if you look at the rebounding numbers when he was out, like they were, obviously starkly different, and in the negative direction.
Yeah. I know we have Jaden Parker, but once he got in foul trouble, there's not really anybody else that.
I like Parker a lot. He's got a little. He needs to add a little bit of muscle, but I think he's just what he can do as a rim protector, and how his athleticism. He gives you a whole lot as a shot blocker, obviously.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that. He's 2 blocks away from
Greg Dennis. Is that right?
Single season record for blocks. I think it's Greg Dennis. No, it's Isaiah Brown.
He was a monster. That dude was. I mean, he's one of the best centers that I've seen in mid-major basketball. Like,
I wish I was alive for that period of ETSU basketball.
It was probably like. I mean, I was like 10, but I still remember it. Like he was just impossible. Like the SoCon back then it didn't get, but there were so many just like dudes in the league, like Marshall had a couple guys that were, I think John Taft led the country in scoring at Marshall. Furman had a couple guys that were really good.
There was that one year with Western too.
Yeah.
Western had some guys.
Western's always had really good guard play for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And they've always had that guy that can score like 80 points in a game or something. But this year, going back to Sanford, I know we kind of got off of it, but like I think they got to close out the season strong.
Yeah.
I don't think you can. I think you got to go out and show that the Wofford game was a blip on the radar aberration, so to speak.
I know. Based on what I've seen, UNCG and Chattanooga, I think I think it comes down to one of those two.
I agree. I think I lean a little bit more towards UNCG.
Yeah,
because
me too.
You can't put a price on maturity, and like for you got 2 guys like the Langleys. They've been in so many big games,
And you have the other transfer you got. Oh, what's his name?
Mikael Brown-Jones from VCU.
Yep.
And I like the one thing that concerns me a little bit about them is like sometimes their bench play isn't. They don't get the production off the bench that they need, so they're putting everything on like 3 or 4 guys, which is hard too.
They let the runs come. Like once they go in, they sort of have to shoot lights out to stay. But once they're on, they're on.
So it's weird. Like, so I think this year, the reason it's been so hard to figure out who's Sanford's obviously the best team, but like who is, like, no one's really dominant. Like, so the league feels like it's all been determined on like whatever matchup is not a good matchup.
Yeah. Because I think the worst matchup in the conference for ETSU is Chattanooga, honestly, because they have a big man that can.
Obviously, Mercer and UNCG is not a good matchup for UNCG. Yeah. Furman, UNCG is not a good matchup for Furman. Like Sanford the crazy thing about them is they've lost 6 games in the regular season in the past 2 years in the SoCon, and 5 of them have been to Furman and Wofford.
Teams that can splash.
Yeah.
At a big time rate.
So and that was what killed them in Asheville last year. Like, they got in the game against Chattanooga. I think Chattanooga hit like 16 or 17 3-pointers. Like, perimeter defense, at times has just been very mediocre to not good at all.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
It's weird too. The best player in the conference is on Western Carolina, and they kind of fell off after a strong start early. You got them.
I feel like them and UNCG sort of have the same kind of problem. They don't get enough from their bench. Now, last night they did, but that was because it was senior night. And so they brought a starter. So all those starters' points count as, bench points. But like against UNCG, I think they had maybe 0 or 8 or something. Like, but the two teams had a combined 8 bench points. But
yeah,
I do think that, Woolbright's, he only took 9 shots last night and scored. But he just he did so. I think that was more impressive to me than like him getting a triple double, is that he doesn't. You'd think he'd shoot more.
He feels the flow of the game and shoots how the game's going. Yeah, instead of just jacking shots like prime Allen Iverson or something.
The other thing I think though is the one area of his game he has to improve is like his perimeter shooting.
Yeah, he wasn't the best he's not the best 3-point shooter. He's just a pure scorer type, archetype guard.
And so that's been fun to watch, and to see the whole battle last night. He has a triple double, and Pegues over here has 35. It's like, how many times are you going to see one guy on one team have a triple double and the guy on the other team has 35 points? Like, if they're not in an NBA game.
Yeah.
But that was fun.
Pegues is probably the most clutch player in the conference.
Yeah.
Has a history as the most clutch performer.
I don't know. Like, that's something that I've never figured. Like, there's got to be some kind of science to that. Like,
yeah. Like, some dudes get hot, like, when they're under pressure. Like,
Jordan was sort of like that, right?
Yeah. The more they go on, the more they're just sort of get in their zone.
Like, one guy that's not really like that's LeBron. Like, he cannot. Like, Jordan could always be that, or like Reggie Miller.
Yeah,
Miller was good in those situations, or like
Larry Bird too.
Yeah, Larry Bird. Yeah, some guys want that like pressure. It makes them better players. But I think this league this year has so many. What's neat is like Woolbright is obviously the best player. He should get Player of the Year hands down. But like, you've got other guys at every other school that do different things that make them really sort of like their own unique niche. Like Pegues is like the clutch guy. Like ETSU has Boyd, who does a little bit of everything. And then I even think if you go to like Ebby, he's sort of a 3-level scorer, like we talked about. He can shoot. He can be like a slasher to the rim, but he can also. He's a problem defensively, like, because he's a good free throw shooter too. Like,
I think honestly, Ebby and Jaden Seymour, they are on that borderline of.
I think Seymour is an NBA guy. He's like next, like if
he's grown quite a bit.
If he develops like I think he can, he's got the certain attributes that make him attractive at that level, because he's long, he's athletic, if he can, he's a. I feel like he shot a little bit better from the perimeter last year.
Yeah, because he's not going as much on physicality.
But that's I feel like he is a good shooter. He just hasn't had maybe the year that he could have, he maybe had last year as a shooter.
Yeah, I thought he's been better, to be completely honest. Maybe it's because I didn't watch as much last year. I haven't.
But I think there's certain. He doesn't have to do much. Like, he sort of reminds me a little bit of Slauson. Like, sort of, I don't know, like Slauson was 6'7". I guess that's about what Seymour is. Maybe.
Seymour is, let's see, I think he's like 6'8", 6'9".
Okay.
Depending on how much
he might. Listed. Okay, so he might be actually an inch taller. But he's he's pretty strong. I mean, he had to work on that part of his. I think
6'8".
He's still.
Yeah, okay.
6'8". He's ultra. He might be the most athletic. He might. Let me see. He probably is the most athletic player in the league. I'd go out on a limb and say that.
He added 15 pounds of muscle in the offseason. I remember hearing that, and I was like,
I think that if the SoCon had a dunk contest, he'd win it.
Probably, yeah. He can just jump out of the gym. Like, last night he had an alley-oop. It wasn't flashy, but just like you throw a lob to him, he's going to catch it.
He's a sick athlete. I mean, I'm not even going to lie. Like, I think one of the things that strikes me about him, and one of the things that always equates to NBA guys, is they're quick jumpers. Like, they're good athletes that aren't quick. Like, he is an extreme. He gets off from A to B extremely fast, like as a leaping ability wise. And that's something that, like, if you look at the better athletes in the NBA, like Dominique and like Sean Kemp in his day, were all like, they just got off their feet quickly. And that's, I think I mean, I could be wrong, but I think he'll be very attractive at the next level.
I could definitely see him getting drafted just like Slauson did, depending on what he does next year.
Yeah. Depending on how he develops over the offseason.
Because I think
the other guy I think is like that is that Lexus guy from Chattanooga. I think he's
Chattanooga.
Yeah. We'll see. He's got. I think his deal is he sort of just disappears sometimes in games. I think he's a great player. I think he gets lost, and that's something you've always got to be. If you're not producing offensively, you got to get it done on the defensive end. You got to impact the game in some way. But ETSU, so they've got final game of the season, UNCG. It's a big one.
Yeah. It's the biggest game all year, I'd say. Just like going above 500, finishing the year above 500, with how recent history's been for us ETSU fans, it's just been it mean everything to win on senior day. And sort of build that culture of winning back.
And then, I think I'm not the one real dark horse to me. Well, I mean, I guess there's multiple dark horses this year, but like you look at, there's 4 teams that I think of, like Wofford, Western Carolina, Furman, and Mercer. I'm not saying Mercer would. They're hard to figure out.
Yeah, they're a wild card for sure, because they played good, they played bad. You never know what you're going to get.
McCreary's really good. I mean, he's playing like Hakeem Olajuwon right now.
Yeah.
Some of the games he's had, I mean, he's put up multiple 30-point efforts in conference play. And like when they played Samford the other week, I think they had 58 points in the paint. Like, it was like Samford knew that Mercer was going to go inside, and they couldn't do anything about it. Like, Mercer's not. None of Greg Gary's teams have been particularly interested in shooting a lot of things.
Yeah.
But the one thing I think they do better than most teams is rebound. And I'll be like you said. I mean, Jake. Is it Jake Davis?
Jake Davis, that's his name.
He's a good player. He was a guy that was recruited by several different SoCon. I believe ETSU might have recruited. I know Furman did, but he chose Mercer.
His name.
And the other guys,
Indiana connection with Greg Gary.
Yeah, he gets all like. I remember the first year he was in the league was Forbes' last year, and they had that guard. God, his name escapes me. He was like Serbian, maybe.
Oh, yeah, I remember that guy's name.
Some JUCO in Nebraska. Well, like Forbes knew about him. It's like we were trying to get him, at ETSU, because he's literally, and like Gary got him to commit, but like that guy made. I mean that team really didn't have a whole lot of great players on it, but that guy sort of just made that team that year, and it really allowed Mercer to have the best year they've had under him, because they were the only team that went to ETSU and won that year, which is pretty amazing, considering that, like,
I remember that game. That was like our only loss. That's pretty much the reason we weren't ranked at the end of the year.
I think ETSU shot it really bad that game.
Yeah, that was like our one. That was our trap game.
And they shot like 70-something% for the game. Just something crazy.
I think it was them. That was one of them, North Dakota State, Kansas. I forget who the other team was we lost to.
Well, but that was Furman was a road loss. But that really didn't hurt you, because Furman was like top.
They were
75 in the country. Yeah. So the only loss that really hurt you was because you lost to Mercer, and it was at home. I don't know what North Dakota State. I want to say North Dakota State was decent.
They were a tournament team, I think.
Yeah.
So
I think that wasn't that they were hosting that tournament, right? That you lost.
I think so. I think so. That was the return trip. They came to Johnson City, and then we went up there. So.
See, but you kind of canceled that out by winning at LSU.
Yeah.
And doing it in probably convincing fashion. That was pretty convincing. Yeah, I kind of knew. People that follow the SoCon kind of knew that ETSU was probably going to win that game.
Yeah.
Not that LSU was a really good team. It's just they didn't. That wasn't a good matchup for LSU.
Because we shot the lights out. I forget, was it Boyd and Patrick Good shot pretty good that game?
I think Rodriguez had a good game, didn't he?
Yeah, he did too, I think. Yeah. And you go back and watch that at some point. Anyway, I was going to sort of get into the tourney predictions for both of us.
Okay. This is like solving a Rubik's Cube or something.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because we don't know what the final standings are.
Well, I think it depends. Sanford is going to be the one. I'm going to assume that so we're going to assume that Mercer plays the Citadel, I guess.
Yeah.
In the 8-9 game. And then, I think Mercer, I don't think it'll be a 30-point game like it was last year when Mercer played the Citadel. But I think Mercer wins that game. And then they play Sanford, a team that, the two times that they played this year, Sanford only won by like 8 or 7 or 8 in Birmingham
Mm-hmm.
when they played Mercer. It's not a great matchup for Samford, and I don't know, man. I don't know if they're not healthy. Like McCreary's going to eat them alive if Akor is not healthy.
They're gonna.
That is seriously
that
is seriously a problem if they're not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Like they could lose to the 9 seed or whatever, 8 seed or whatever.
Especially with how their momentum is right now.
I mean, they had Akor last time, and they still got beat. You know, I know it was in Macon, but I mean, like
when it comes to Asheville, anything can happen. Like it's.
I think Samford will find a way to win that game, but like I wouldn't be shocked if they lost it.
See, I think Samford wins 1 or 2 games, but I think they get beat at some point in the SoCon tourney.
I think the 4-5 winner beats Samford.
Yeah.
Whoever that is, whether it's Wofford or Furman or Western Carolina, whoever comes out of that game, I think is going to beat Samford. I
think so.
And I know, like Western probably should have beat. Well, I don't want to say should have beaten them, but they lost a close game.
First time, yeah, the first
Western.
game.
The second game, we just got away from them.
Like, yeah, they were in their own head. They're kind of in a slump already,
but Western has that dude. Like, it's funny. Like, if Western wins a game in Asheville, everybody else in like the vicinity of Silva, Dillsboro, and Cullowhee discovers there's a basketball game, and Western Carolina's involved in it in Asheville. So, like, you know,
get everyone rooting, the neutrals rooting for them. That come
right, and so they've got that guy. They've got a guy that no one else really has. They got Woolbright. I mean, like he can
take over the game,
and he's tough to guard because like it's not necessarily that he's just so quick that he gets by you. It's quite the opposite. He's just so strong that even if he doesn't score, he usually goes to the line. He usually gets fouled, you know. Or if neither of those things happen, he gets his own rebound and scores. So I don't know. It's just he's like a point forward. He can play like the 1 through 4.
I think he has a chance at the NBA too. We're talking about NBA players.
Oh yeah,
I think he has a chance.
I think he does.
Being positionless, you know, he's just one of those guys that puts in the effort.
And the one thing that's so impressive, like I was talking, like he doesn't get enough credit as a defender. Like he's so good defensively. Like I watched him last night on that end. Like he defended Foster as good as anybody has this year. And also he's an underrated. Like I know he's an underrated passer. He doesn't. He gets his other teammates involved, which is for a guy that averages what he does. It's kind of, I don't know if that didn't really surprise me, but it's different when you see him play in person than as opposed to on TV. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I mean, he's that, like, the problem I think with Western is I don't know how much you can get away with Lampton not scoring at all. Like sometimes you have to get some scoring from your post players.
Yeah.
Which I don't feel like Western gets enough.
They're not. Yeah, they don't really have as much scoring as some other teams in their interior, from their interior players.
But they're good. They're pretty good defense. I mean, he's a good shot blocker.
Let's see, Lampton, Woolbright, Robertson. They have a good group of guards.
Yeah, they're all. They have the. You know, I would say they probably have the best collection of talent. I mean, Russell Jones Jr. is a really good player. Trey Jackson, he's one of the better three-point shooters in the league. And then you got DJ Campbell, who can do a little bit of everything. I mean, they're really good in the backcourt. But I thought Brooks Savage made an interesting point when he said, if you can somehow force Woolbright's assist numbers to go down, they're not as successful, which that's interesting to me.
We've kind of seen that play out. Do you think they have a chance at all at getting the SoCon tourney?
I do. I
do too. I honestly do too. And that's the conundrum. We have so many teams that can be.
I would actually put them up towards one of my I know I'd say there's 16. There are 6 teams that could legitimate 6 or 7, maybe. Heck, I don't know. Somebody could play in. This could be the year that a play-in team wins it. Yeah. But I mean, there are 6 teams that I feel pretty good about because they got the bye or whatever. But that Western would be in that top tier that I would say has an absolute chance to win it because I say that because they have the one guy that no one else really does. And he's mature, he's smart, he's pretty level-headed guy, He doesn't seem to get too upset.
I think my prediction for the final, depending on where their season is, Western and UNCG, I think that's going to be the final. And I think UNCG pulls it out just because based on experience, I'd say.
I'll go. Let's see. I'll say. I don't know, man. I still think Western. Here's the problem I'm having. Is say the 4 or 5 game is Western and Furman, and they just played, and it was pretty close, and Western won. How comfortable do I feel like that they're going to turn around and win that game again on a neutral court? I don't know.
Just depends on what Saturday looks like, I'd say.
Yeah, that's true. But I'll say, if it's Wofford Furman, which it could be, and then that would put. See, I think that's interesting too, because if Western fell to the 6, that would put they would be playing Chattanooga, which they would be turning around and playing Chattanooga again.
See, that's it's the same thing with ETSU and UNCG. Turning around. If we win on Saturday, it's we gotta play them again. So they'll be the 2 seed probably.
Does that play?
Most likely.
My thing is always on that. And I was thinking about this last night with Furman. Does the psychology of that play into that match? I'm not saying the teams try to lose, but you got to be thinking because if I'm thinking about it, somebody else is thinking about that. And it's basketball. We're not, and these teams are literally not separated by all that much.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, these and on a neutral floor. I guess a little part of me says that if it is Chattanooga and Western, it's hard to pick against Western and Nashville.
Yeah, so that's the thing.
And I'm not so sure that even that they did win a close game against Furman, I'm not so sure that I wouldn't pick Western again because they're in Nashville. But then I don't know. I just don't know. So I'll go ahead and say, let's say Wofford and Furman's a 4-5. I'll say Furman wins that game, and then let's say that Western and Chattanooga is the 3-6. So I'll say Western wins that game. So like you got, and then where am I? What's the other game on that side? 2 and who would be 2? UNCG and
I'm not sure of all the seeding. Is it Chats?
So that would be UNCG and ETSU probably.
Probably if
we're just assuming here.
If I'm pretty much if we're playing VMI.
Okay, so let's say win. ETSU gonna win that game. They'll win that game. UNCG, ETSU. Now, man, I have no idea what the.
That's a toss-up, honestly, on a neutral court.
Because I think ETSU is going to win Saturday.
I do too. I really do. I know.
And so, since they're going to win Saturday, I'm going to pick UNCG.
Yeah, that's probably how it's going to go, I'd say.
And then, but it's going to be close. I mean, all these games are going to be close. So we got UNCG and who is 2?
We got
so who did I pick in the other game? UNCG.
Is Chat?
So I picked Western to beat Chat.
Okay.
So Western is it Western and UNCG that I have? Is that one semifinal and Sanford and Furman is the other one?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I'm gonna pick. Gosh, man, like this is another hard one because UNCG owned, but they were both close games.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna pick Western to upset UNCG this time.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna pick Furman to beat Sanford, and then Western to beat Furman in the championship.
Okay. Sanford to beat Furman? That? Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
No, well, Furman to beat Sanford and then lose to Western in the championship because I think Western will be the champion.
Okay,
so I picked Western Carolina as my champion, I guess.
Champion, okay. I mean,
that's how I logically would come.
Yeah, we're both guessing here, but I mean, I just wanted to have this segment in because it's just to show how crazy the conference is.
I mean, that's as good as a pick. Western Carolina is as good as a pick as, to me,
it's Sanford,
like as anyone else.
Yeah.
But I kept thinking, if it ends up that way, I don't know if I kept thinking I might pick UNCG. But like if I just don't know how many times that UNCG can prevail against Western Carolina. I mean, maybe it happens again. Mm-hmm. But it is like a second home game to Western Carolina.
Mm-hmm. All I know is this SoCon tournament's going to be electric, and I really hope ETSU goes far after their performance after beating Citadel, and hopefully UNCG victory. I'm going to sort of transition.
Do you want to
what?
Yeah, I was going to let you do that. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to transition sort of for a smaller segment. I know we've gone for an hour about SoCon basketball. We could go for like 2 more, knowing us to, but I was going to transition into ETSU football and SoCon football. I'm just going to do a trivia question. I know you probably already know the answer. I'm just doing this. I sort of do this just to do a transition and give us some breathing time. But my trivia question this week is, what year did ETSU lead an improbable comeback against Furman, since you're a Furman guy, on the way to the SoCon championship?
2018, is that right?
Yeah, 2018.
So that was a Herrick and comes off the bench and rescues.
Yeah.
Because everybody else, everybody's favorite quarterback is the backup, right?
Yeah.
And he actually was that night.
Because honestly, that whole game, like that season, Sanders' first year, he'd been playing between Logan Marshy and Henrik.
Logan was the guy from Temple, right?
Yeah, Temple.
And he was the guy that was like sort of polished and came in, and
Yeah,
everybody thought was the guy, you know.
he's just
But
kind of a coach's coach because he's a coaching assistant now
you remember the year
somewhere.
before that, ETSU got beat. I remember this because I was watching the kid. Furman was. They played at Furman.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, that Herring guy, he got absolutely like just beat around like a rag and got up every time. And
he had like 400 yards that game, I think.
Yeah, and it, like
Furman.
he should not like that guy. Some of the hits he took, I was just like, how is that guy getting up? Like that. I mean, that impressed me like more than. And I was like, well, okay. I kind of thought he was a really good player. Like I didn't understand why he wasn't the starter, because that was only experience I had seeing him the year. But he was pretty accurate that day.
He was the best QB on those early the Revital program rosters.
And so I just thought, well, Logan Marchi must just be awesome, because I thought that guy was really good last year. Like, given the circumstances, you know, he's completing passes with defenders, you know, bearing down on him all the time.
He had a lot of big victories. The game at Bristol, he started that whole season. He started pretty much. I think it just comes down to Marchi was more of a, like, he studied the playbooks more, but Henrik was more of just a gamer. Like, you put him in and he just balls out, you know. One of those type
the
of
interesting
guys.
thing about, you know, Trey Lamb's, he's a quarterback. You know, he's going to be obviously. Is he Tennessee Tech's all-time leading passer? Is that right?
I think so. He's up there. I don't. I'm not sure.
He's a really good quarterback.
Yeah.
When he was, you know, in school, and obviously, I think a really good coach. But I like his. I like the fact that he's enthusiastic, and he's kind of gone out there and taken initiative.
Yeah.
In some of the NIL stuff and setting up the you know, the website, and you know, a lot of coaches are just kind of
dealing
with they're not being as proactive as they could be with that stuff, and I think that's one of the places he's kind of winning right now, because they just assume because it's an FCS school that, oh, you know, you can't do that stuff here or whatever. You know what I mean?
He's been active on the recruiting trail. Like, of all the ETSU coaches we've had, love Sanders, love Torbush.
Another thing is, like, there's a lot to be said. He's from what I understand from other coaches, he's pretty well liked. Like, you know, and I always think that, like, to be well liked, you have to kind of be pretty kind of well known. I mean, I think he's got a lot of respect from his peers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know I have a friend that's in coaching. He was an assistant, or like a student assistant at VMI, like, type deal. He said he knows him through coaching clinics and stuff, and he says he's good person, good. Him and his brother, who I think are both on staff. Maybe not. Oh no, his brother's at App State or Virginia.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. His and Bobby Lamb is his uncle, who's the coach at And so, like, he comes from that's another thing is like his family is like all in coaching.
Coaching royalty, yeah.
Yeah.
His dad or his grandpa was like the all-time winner
guy
in
at Georgia. That's right. Yeah.
High school wins in Georgia.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to having him in the league. I don't think that, like, I know a lot of ETSU people would say, oh, you shouldn't have hired, that was the previous AD's guy or whatever. I think that was just probably that wasn't a good situation for Quarles, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily think he was a bad coach, though.
Yeah.
I just think he was set up to lose. He was set up. There was no way he was going to be that was going to be a good situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of get the feeling that he was in over his head, like just in an environment like ETSU. Like I feel like he would have been better at like a D2
Right.
school type place where lower stress, not as high of expectations.
Right. And I'm glad he's getting. Where's he's getting another. Did he go to Tuscaloosa?
Tight end coach at Austin Peay.
Austin Peay. I'm glad he's getting another chance. Albeit Austin Peay is not my favorite.
Yeah.
But they kind of. I don't know. That's an interesting. They're sort of. I watched a lot of that game when they played Chattanooga last year, and their coach seemed like he was sort of like a cheerleader over there or something.
Yeah,
I don't know what he was trying to accomplish.
Austin Peay's had some. This is off topic, but Austin Peay's football program's been like had some wild coaches. Names
the Healy guy
pop up there. Healy,
right.
He interviewed for ETSU's job.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that. He's actually really charismatic and pretty energetic guy. He's like mini Dabo of the FCS.
Yeah. You had him. You had Marks Hugspeth, former Louisiana coach there for like a year or two.
Yeah, something weird happened with that because like he was winning and all of a sudden he wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't ask too many questions on.
Yeah. Because
I think I know, but
violations.
Like I don't want to like say
recruiting violations at Louisiana. So
yes,
it probably followed him there.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. It's like all bad news. He sort of just finds you out wherever you go, even if
yeah.
But that was a program that was not really good for a long time prior to him, and so that's interesting to me. But getting back on topic, I think ETSU really made a good hire here.
Me too.
I think he's going to get it turned around far sooner than later.
Based on everything I've heard,
that it'll be.
I don't know. Night and day.
It might be. You never know. It could be next year. I'm not going to make any bold predictions, but they'll be a lot better next year.
I think we'll be around a 500 team. I think we'll have our early struggles because of just our schedule. We play.
Yeah. I like the fact that a lot of the SoCon teams went out and scheduled some people that are good, good teams. They didn't just get like, PC and there's several
Pioneer League
teams playing William & Mary and so they're playing other leagues. So Western plays Montana, I think.
Because we play NDSU, App State, and Elon to start.
Everybody if you look at several of the teams in the league play really good out of conference games. Like Furman and VMI play William & Mary. Wofford plays William & Mary, and then that's where the only way that the league is gonna get more playoff teams is to win those games.
Yeah, because our last year we kind of cannibalized each other towards the end.
Well, and it was a good league because you can judge that based on how teams did in the Big Sky was like all their fans were like, oh, we're so good, and nobody can, Furman can't hang with Montana. I'm like, okay, you're living in your own world because the SoCon is good. I mean, it doesn't get enough credit. I mean, I know ETSU and several of the teams struggled towards the bottom last year, but I didn't think those teams were horrible. Like, as people around the nation would say, well, ETSU's no good. I mean, they obviously had some players, they were in most games. You can't control your quarterback issues when you have injuries like you have.
That was catastrophic. That killed any chance of us.
But defensively, ETSU wasn't bad.
We had Sheldon Arnold who stayed around. All those defensive backs Defensive line was good.
Billy Taylor's always had a pretty disciplined defense, and that was what they were that last year. I mean, other than was it Austin P maybe? What game was it that got out of hand?
Austin P. Yeah, it was Austin P.
Other than that game, I felt like they were decent on defense.
Mm-hmm. Who's the other? Two teams we got blown out by Austin P. and who was it?
Jacksonville
State.
That was a little bit surprising because I didn't know. Jacksonville State actually ended up being pretty good though.
Yeah,
that one didn't.
That one didn't
panned out a little bit better than the Austin P one, and Austin P had a really good quarterback.
Him going to UTEP.
Yeah,
he's probably going to be a success there.
Who do you think will be picked to win the league? I think it'll probably be Chattanooga.
Yeah, they bring the most back, and what's his name?
Artopius. Yeah,
Artopius.
He actually ended up being pretty good. I didn't know how good he would be. Like, some guy that UCLA forgot about basically is like, and then he ended up being pretty good. But the weird thing about Chattanooga is they only have I think they only have like 2 quarterbacks.
I think so.
I mean, and the other guy's decent. He had to come in the playoffs because Artopius got hurt.
Yeah. I know it's been a point of contention. He almost came to ETSU, had his visit scheduled, and then canceled it, and he committed to Chat. Like, right.
That could. How big of a rivalry? Like, is that rivalry? Because I would think that would be a pretty big rivalry.
It's fairly decent. It's more in basketball, I'd say, but like the schools, we go at each other. It's not
do you like the trophy they play for or not?
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense because Chattanooga's a railroad town, and so is Johnson City.
Sorry,
they're both railroad towns.
You're wondering what I'm doing. I was scared it was going to go out.
Yeah, die in the middle of the podcast.
Yeah, that would not be good. But yeah, do you? I guess we probably should have just made this like a 2-part podcast because
it's all good because as long as I can still upload it. It'll just take a lot longer, but it'll be okay.
Yeah. As far as, I mean, we could talk about baseball and stuff next time.
Yeah, we'll get into that later. How's Furman looking with what's his name?
I mean, they're gonna be young.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you lose a guy to something like the kid had an embolism or whatever.
Yeah,
and, Bryce Stanfield, I'm talking about. Let me find my plug-in. Anyway, he had an embolism, and that's obviously when you lose. It doesn't matter when you lose somebody like that. It's always going to be tough, and what makes it particularly hard is that kid was going to be a starter, and he had waited his turn, and I think the team is trying to, as much as you can, try to put that behind you.
Yeah.
But obviously, I talked to some of the players today, like former players, and they were just saying it was pretty tough. But I think they were pretty proud of the fact that they proved the SoCon wasn't a pushover last year, which I thought was kind of neat. And they were like, they didn't really. He was like, it wasn't necessarily the Montana players or coaches. It was more like the media and stuff that were saying that stuff about the SoCon,
I mean, that was a good game that they played. Furman stayed around.
They said, well, one of the offensive linemen for Montana has said that Furman was the most physical team they had played all year. Up front, and
Furman's defense was absolutely outrageous last year.
Yeah, that's the best defense they've probably had in my life. Well,
yeah,
the defensive line was just because like I remember Western Carolina had a really good offensive line, and like they hadn't given up a sack since like the Arkansas game, which is pretty impressive. And so like Furman had like 3 sacks by halftime, and I'm just like, what like are these? I mean, they were just. What Furman did was they had 2 lines that were equally as good as each other. So like they would rotate 4 guys in, 4 guys out, and like there was, it was kind of an anomaly. Like you don't see that in FCS much. But those are guys that had stayed around because you got that year, and most of the other guys were transferring because of the NI, getting the transfer portal. Furman was able to retain all those guys, so they just got not only were good, but they got like oodles of experience. Like there's one guy that was like a 7th year guy for ETSU.
Yeah,
the linebacker
Jared Folks. Folks. He transferred from Temple too. Speaking, so
they were not only were they good, they were just like men. Like they were lining up against younger guys,
19-year-old.
Yeah.
Guys.
So, but I mean, I also think too is like Montana. I mean, like the SoCon. I think we did enough the last 2 years. If you go back to Sanford, they played a decent game at North Dakota State a couple of years ago. The SoCon is hitting at a higher level right now.
Yeah. Although there's quite a bit of losses.
If you go back to it started with ETSU's run. Yeah. I would say they played, I mean, as well as you can up in, that
NDSU. Our issue was our offensive line. Their defense was just too good. Like,
and they get all their dang games out. Like it's like all those teams. We got to be able to get them on our turns.
Get them down here.
Right.
I know. I'm excited for that NDSU game ETSU's playing this year.
Is that is that a 2-year deal? Like, do they?
Yeah, we got a return trip.
So they're coming to ETSU this year.
Yeah.
Wow, that's gonna be cool. See, like I wonder. I mean, I bet the atmosphere is gonna be absolutely.
Oh,
great.
It's gonna be
I'm gonna have to make the trip that game.
I hope all of ETSU's fan base, at least the ones, we're gonna try to outbuy NDSU.
It's crazy. Because NDSU will bring some.
Apparently they go to towns and they drink out the bars. That's what they do in Frisco. That's what they said they do. Hopefully they don't do that here.
So, what bar would they go to?
I don't know. Just depends on, because you got the downtown bars. There's a few of them. There's not really like a set bar in JC that's like the spot.
Yeah. I know, like in Montana, they all have like one place that everybody congregates.
Yeah.
So,
for ETSU students, it's like Newman's and Tipton's. Holy talk, like that area, but just depends. Downtown.
I mean, I don't like. I think if ETSU, they've got a really tough non-conference. I think if they get through into conference play, I mean, I could see them going. It wouldn't be shocking to see them go 6-5 next
Yeah,
year.
I'd say that's a reasonable expectation. Sort of like the basketball team this year.
Yeah.
You just don't know. There's too many unknowns, new players. Especially, we don't know our starting QB yet. We have two transfers that I think
all the injuries seem to occurred on the offensive side of the ball last year.
Yeah,
for some reason.
It was just so unfortunate. The one I was most like sad about was
Huzzy.
Yeah, Will Huzzy. He was like
he got
3 receptions away. Yeah, knee injury, like second to last game. He was like 3 receptions away from.
He was gonna break the record.
Yeah. He's
a good player, and he's a guy that you hated more because he actually came back from the portal.
Yeah.
And I really respect that decision because that's going to be hard, to do.
And especially after the difficulty we had Coral's first year, come back to a team you didn't know where you're going to have success or not.
I think the key to the whole thing is like ETSU, who's going to be like, I know last year was kind of not really a throwaway year, but there's some good talent in the running game.
Yeah.
At running back. Mm-hmm. But you just never got to really see it because they were so chaotic. You didn't know who was going to be quarterback.
Yeah.
So you didn't get a chance. You saw glimpses of those guys, but you didn't really get a chance to see what they might be as the in an offense to where you actually had an identity and you could,
actual identity. Because we could have had a two-headed monster with Irby and I forget his name.
Because they really offset
Idaho
each
transfer.
Other. Yeah. The Idaho guy was a little bit. He was a more rugged guy. Better in short yardage, and then Irby was more of the speed guy, right? So, I kind of think that's going to be an element that you'll see that there'll be a lot of improvement next year. But
Borish, that's his name.
Zach
Borish. Yeah.
Good player. Yeah.
It was sad how that all went down.
Yeah.
There's some drama with the coaches in the middle of the year, towards the end of the year. But,
I didn't. Yes. Did he? I heard, but I didn't really know if that was a rumor or
it was kind of there. I don't know the full extent.
Yeah.
Kind of not my place to say anything. I appreciate him and his family. They watched the podcast. I know that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's a good player. I mean, obviously
he's a good kid.
I think when you don't have your quarterback and a guy that knows the offense, it's so hard to get from A to B, even from there. So I think that ETSU was kind of hamstrung from that. At a lot of positions, not just running back, but offensive line. It kind of stunted the development of what maybe they could have been last year, if that makes sense.
That makes that's how it was from a fan's perspective.
Yeah,
our offense, there was no consistency.
From and then you had really good, and really good tight end. I think.
Oh, what's his name? Noah West.
Noah West, yeah.
Noah West.
He was just such a target, huge. I don't know how was he 6'7", 6'6"?
I think so. Let's see, Noah West.
Because you remember Atkins started. And Atkins was it South Carolina?
South Carolina, because his dad was the coach there.
Yeah, he was the dude that made two of the best catches in the Kennesaw game, I believe.
Yeah, that was 2-point conversion.
Yeah. So, but yeah,
I'm glad he's in the NFL.
I really don't know. I don't really know. I think Furman will be okay. I don't. They do have some talent back on defense, but I think the biggest question is offensive line because you lose 3 starters there, I think, or 3 starters. But one guy would probably be in the NFL, and so that's not easy to replace.
And losing Tyler Huff to the portal.
Yeah, that's gonna be hard. And see, he's doing the Army basic training stuff right now, so he won't be available till July. So that's gonna make it tough for him to catch on with somebody. If that makes.
Where did he go? He transferred somewhere.
Well, he's still is it Tulane maybe?
Jacksonville State.
Oh, Jacksonville State. Okay.
Jacksonville State. He'll do good there.
Yeah, because they had a good year. I think they won 9 games.
They were running kind of typical Rich Rodriguez offense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rich Rod. He and
I remember I remember him in the Big Ten when I was a kid.
Yes. And they remember him in West Virginia, too. He's still not allowed
his bridges.
Right.
He burned his bridges. What is it with West Virginia coaches burning bridges?
Or couches or whatever.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I don't know. I mean, that seems like that should be an easy job that's not. If that makes sense.
They're kind of like they're in the no man's land where they're kind of like they have a blue blood fan base, but their team is
not
all
exactly
over the place. Yeah,
they're sort of like a pedestrian team and a blue blood fan base. Yes.
Yeah.
But I feel like West Virginia is one of those places that's like maybe a sleeping giant if the right coach ever gets there. But it's got to be hard to recruit. Like, you got to think about
it's isolated, kind of.
Yeah, like
from big cities.
Coal mine country. It's like, I mean, I know I give Clemson a hard time for being like dairy cows and stuff, but it can't be as bad as coal mine country.
Unless you got someone like Pat McAfee that's going there for the party.
That's making a name for punters everywhere. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they were pretty good. Like, the whole SoCon connection there was the guy that used to be at VMI, was their coach. You know, and they were really good. They were the ones that developed sort of the spread option, really, with is it Slayton, the quarterback. They were so fast. They had so many fast guys. I know that's where App State got all their ideas from to run the spread option, and they brought that to the Southern Conference, and that kind of offset a wave of different offensive, fast-paced. You know, that craze hit about 2007, 8-ish, I think. So where the defense could make substitutions and all kinds of chaos.
Yeah. No, SoCon, it's going to be an interesting year because there's a lot of teams that lose a lot. Like you said, Chat's probably the favorite. They bring back the most. Did they lose their running back?
Yes.
They have their backup. Ford? Was it Ford?
Hey, Appleberry. You talking about Gino Appleberry? I think Gino's back. I'm not sure. But I know Ford is gone, I think.
Ford's gone. Okay. They had a bunch of depth at running back.
They had good receivers. I think their top receiver left, though. That's it, right?
Maybe.
But
I know Mercer. They had a surprising. Their coach leaving, Drew Cronick leaving.
Yeah, and they're probably gonna be a team that takes a little bit
to get back.
I think even more than like Furman. I think it'll be Mercer's gonna be. I think it's sort of a double whammy when you have guys leaving and then you lose a coach.
Yeah, because think about Trey Lamb coming to ETSU is he brought his whole system over the air raid offense. So I don't know.
That's not. It's going to translate easier than it will because Mercer,
someone that's starting fresh,
right? Because like it's not like like ETSU had like a bunch of years under Quarles.
Yeah,
like it wasn't like they had just this infrastructure that was like. Yeah, they made such a quick coaching. It's sort of like basketball. It's like you made such a quick change that you didn't really get to recruit to an identity, so to speak. You just kind of, you know what I mean? You can make those players develop into any kind of whatever, want them to be in, like the air raid or whatever,
What's so weird
and he's got a lot of Gardner Webb guys that'll help with that.
I know. I'm excited I've looked at all those guys. Ad whatever extensively
ad nauseum.
There we go. Couldn't find my words, but like Jalen King, the transfer, he's going to be exciting. He's a freshman.
Yeah.
I think he brought in both of his QBs. I think the guy from St. Francis starts initially.
Yeah.
But Jalen King's going to be there for the next 2 years.
He's got some guys that have played in, they've got
2-3
experience.
years.
It's not just like they're just coming in with no experience.
Yeah.
So, and they're good players too. He's not getting guys that are just, fighting
outcasts.
Right. They're like garbage time in games. He's getting guys that played meaningful action. So
I know we got a transfer on the offense. We got a bunch on the offensive line. Players that have played games. We got a grad transfer from App State.
Yeah, they'll. App State always traditionally has really good offensive linemen. So, anytime you can get, especially like a grad transfer too, that's some maturity and experience. Because you got to think about it from Trey Lamb's perspective. He's got to figure out who his leaders are and who his leadership sort of council is. And so he's kind of creating all that right now because the guys have to be accountable to somebody when he's not around, when Coach Lamb's not around. So, and part of that will be some of the guys that are returning from ETSU, and I guess another part of that will be some of the guys he brings in from other places.
I think he's established an identity already, and I think he hits the portal good. I think it's going to be a great year. I think we finish about what you said, 6-5, 5-6, around that mark.
Somewhere around probably 4-4 in the league, maybe.
Yeah, something close to that.
Which
I haven't looked at our conference schedule yet. I don't think they've released it. Have they released it yet?
Yeah, I think they did.
They did. Okay.
I'll have
a couple weeks ago. I'll have to
go. See, the thing is, you got all these teams are Wofford, Furman, Western they've got some guys back, but I feel like they've lost so many of their big name guys to Pittsburgh and other places where their coaches have taken jobs, and that'll be one place to watch. So anyway, I really don't. The league. We'll find out how well the league is recruited right now, because I feel like it's going to be the youngest throughout the conference that it's been in a long time. And I think Chattanooga's probably going to be picked to win it. I would say Western might probably be picked in maybe the top 2 or 3. Because they do have their quarterback Gonzalez back, and I'm not sure. I'd say probably Furman would be 3rd or 4th, maybe, and then maybe I don't know where to put Mercer, to be honest, because they lost. They lost their quarterback went in the portal, which is a little bit. I guess.
They're just kind of in a weird place because their coach leaving so late.
I felt like Chronic was the first coach. So Coach Lamb came in there and kind of established it and got it on a good foundation.
Yeah.
And then Chronic was the first coach that really had a lot of success with that foundation. And now you feel like, you got to kind of reapply the foundation. You wonder. This is the first adversity they've really had with
as a program.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
We'll see how it happens. I think that's about all I have for tonight.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you a chance to plug yourself once again, sort of the time, and then I'll close. If there's anything you want to plug, like your websites, I'll put them down in the comments.
Okay. Just. You can follow me on Twitter at SoCon John 22, and then you can read, obviously, my work at Mid-Major Madness during basketball season. I'll have the Southern Conference preview up next week, and also the feature on Karan Boyd, and then we'll have, for football season as we get closer, stuff on redshirtsports.com. we'll have like previews and recaps and neat stuff like that. And hopefully, I mean, I'm hoping that the SoCon can really build on what it's been able to do on the gridiron, because it makes my job a lot more fun to be able to write about.
Me too. Having podcasts,
teams that are being successful, rather than having to fight battles that like tell Montana that you're really not as good as you think you are. I'm just kidding. They are good, but like I just it's tough for me when the SoCon doesn't get the respect it deserves, I think.
Especially when teams are down, it's hard to make content. Like you get down, you're like,
yeah, it's
gosh
just like,
what am I right in recording a podcast for? Even though I'm a loyal ETSU fan, it was rough in football season.
It got kind of bad there for a minute when like Wofford lost to Kennesaw State, and then I think Furman got just drilled by Austin Peay. Like it was, I was just like, man, this is a low point. Like these were first round games, and the SoCon's no longer around. And that was when ETSU kind of redeemed a little bit by beating Kennesaw the next year. That slowly, that process, we got a little bit more respect back. So hopefully next year we continue in that trend.
Is that all you had?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I was like sort of
zoned out. Yeah, that happens sometimes. But like, it's been a good episode. I appreciate you for coming on, John.
I appreciate you for having me, man. You do a great job, and anytime we can get another person or a voice out there for our league is a win. So
because I enjoy talking about it. This is what I've been passionate about since like 8 years old, telling everybody about the small teams of college sports. The underdogs. I love doing that.
ETSU's got a great fan base, by the way. It's my favorite. Like those, because I don't know. It's fun,
loyal
to be up. They're really into it, just like I'm into it. So I really appreciate it. That's pretty cool.
Because
to be able to go to a place like that.
Because I remember going to a game at like 8 years old, and I got hooked for life, pretty much. I was like, I'm going to be a fan of ETSU.
And I think that's neat that like FCS. That's one of the neat things about FCS, or just mid majors in general. They have more of a loyalty, and there's more of like a family feel to it than some just huge university,
huge corporate, and got multi-million-dollar NIL.
Right. So that's to me, that's what makes the SoCon so unique and so neat.
Yep, I'm glad to be a part of it.
All right, man. Well, thanks for having me on, man. I really do appreciate it.
Godspeed and go Bucks, and good night, John. Good night, viewers. And this is where I'll end it.